Hello everyone. Today our group will be presenting our discussion of translation and analysis of the short story Benih Harapan. Benih Harapan is a reflective short story based on real experience during the Chechen-Russian War in April 1995. The story is narrated in the first person by international human rights observer who has stationed in Cernovsk near the village of Samashki in Chechnya. The narrative blends personal memory with the harsh realities of war. It highlights the destruction caused by conflict, the suffering of civilians, and the emotional impact on those who witness it. Despite this, the story offers a message of hope through the symbolic use of acacia seeds which later grew in the tree. Overall, Benih Harapan emphasized the idea that even the midst of war and devastation, hope can still survive through small, meaningful action.
I will now provide an overview of the selected excerpts from Bani Harapan. The first excerpt describes the narrator's living environment, which is a former kindergarten surrounded by thorny acacia trees. These trees create an illusion of peace and temporarily hide the reality of war. The second excerpt shifts to the reality of conflict, describing artillery fire, bombings, and the transformation of Cernovets into a refuge for displaced people. The narrator expresses feelings of hopelessness and uncertainty. The final excerpts focus on the narrator bringing acacia seeds back to Russia. Although Samashki and Cernovets are eventually destroyed, one seed survives and grows into a strong tree. These excerpts were selected because they clearly illustrate the movement from destruction to hope, which is the core message of Bani Harapan.
I will now discuss the English translation of the selected excerpts from Bani Harapan. Our translation aimed to preserve the reflective and emotional tone of the original Malay text. We translated factual details such as places, time, and war condition accurately to maintain realism. However, we adjusted sentence structures to ensure the translation sounded natural in English. Long Malay sentences were sometimes simplified for clarity. We also maintained the first person narrative voice to keep the personal and emotional connection between the narrator and the reader. The imagery of war and nature was carefully translated to preserve the contrast between destruction and growth. Overall, our translation focuses on clarity, emotional impact, and narrative flow.
Um, Next, I will explain the translation strategies used in translating Bani Harapan. Firstly, literal translation was used to concrete details such as location, dates, and descriptions of war to ensure accuracy. Secondly, modulation was applied when translating abstract ideas like despair, hope, and resilience. Instead of instead of translating word for word, we adjusted expressions to convey the same meaning naturally in English. Thirdly, cultural adaptation was used for symbolic elements such as the acacia tree. Uh, Rather than explaining its meaning directly, we allowed the I'm sorry. Other than explaining its meaning directly, we allowed the symbolism to be understood through context. These strategies help balance faithfulness to the source text with readability for English readers.
I will now analyze the main themes in Bani Harapan. One major theme is war and disruption, shown through the bombing of Samashki and the fall of Cernovos. The story highlights how war destroys both physical space and human hope. Another important theme is hope and resilience. The survival and growth of the Achasia seed symbolize life continuing despite violence and loss. The story also conveys the theme of peace and humanity, suggesting that small acts, such as planting a seed, can represent resistance against war and a belief in a better future.
Finally, I will discuss the literary device used in Bani Harapan and conclude our discussions. The most significant literary device is symbolism. The acacia tree symbolizes survival, peace, and continuity, while the seeds represent hope for the future. The story also used imagery, especially the contrast between the peaceful natural environment and the violent sounds of war. This contrast strengthened the emotional impact of the narrative. So, in conclusions, Bene Harapan demonstrates how literature can convey powerful message about war, hope, and humanity. Throughout the translation and analysis, we learn that even in the darkest situation, hope can still grow when we nurture it. Thank you.